What do you think are the top 3 qualities of a successful PPP?
Well, in my opinion, the top 3 qualities of a successful PPP is, first of all, when the service is delivered, the good or service is delivered to the consumer at the right time, the right quality, in a sustainable manner. When the private party is able to realize their returns and the government is able to maintain an environment that's conducive for the whole project throughout the lifetime of the PPP.
Thank you. A public-private partnership is really for the delivery of infrastructure for public use by the general populace. It therefore must deliver affordability for whatever its purpose is. It must be affordable for the people, number one. All the parties in there, it's important that they perform, and they perform to their utter best. The government must pay, and the private sector must deliver the good and service. So that's the second key criteria for a successful PPP. The third one is that there must be a sense of exchange of value for money. Whatever parties and whatever roles they're playing in this framework of agreements, there must be a definite feel for value for money exchanged for in the framework of agreements for PPPs.
Well, from my point of view, it's about risk management and risk transfer. So the first and most important thing is to understand the risk, to price it, and to be able to allocate it in the best possible way. The second thing is to create the competitive tension that enables the government and the private sector bidder to come up with a deal that delivers value for money and works for both parties. And the third aspect is to make sure that the PPP is actually going to deliver what the users need, with the citizens and the people who will use the infrastructure and the PPPs.
I think for coming from the public sector, I would like to see very good value for money in a PPP project. That would make it successful. Again, I would want to see that the project has been very well prepared. In any case, if it is very well prepared, you get the private sector on board, because they're always interested in having a project that is ready to go on the market. And at the end of the day, you would want to look at monitoring and evaluation of such a project to see whether you have done well and some of the lessons that you would want to take on board in your next PPP project.
Okay, the top 3 qualities of a successful PPPs. Well, number one, the offtake or the revenue needs to be clear as to how the revenue is going to come in for the debt and the equity to be paid back, and which is then 2, the risk allocation should be done to ensure that that risk is transferred to the party that is best able to manage it, and effectively that enables government to transfer most of the risk it wants to transfer most of the risk it wishes to the private sector and retain the ones that they will best manage. And I think thirdly, it should be done in a place with a very good and well-structured institution and that has a good institutional arrangement, because the enabling environment for the project is also important to enable the project to succeed. But yeah, I think I would stick to that 3, but there are a number of other ones.
What have you found to be common sticking points in implementing PPPs in Africa?
Well, the biggest sticking point to my mind is the capacity gap. It's now very clear to most governments on the continent that the budgets cannot stretch any further to cover infrastructure development. They need to work with the private sector. However, the private sector is this big unknown. They are usually associated with higher returns. And on the other side, you have mostly low-income population that cannot afford the basic services. So the government is faced with the challenge of meeting both expectations. However, the African Development Bank stands ready to advise the governments on how to deal with the private sector. We advise the government to use the solutions that have existed for years in other parts of the world. Project finance is one solution. The way projects should be structured in a PPP environment is well known. Those are tried and tested methods. The risk mitigation instruments are well known. So we give them the encouragement and the confidence to have those discussions with the private sector and the populations at large.
The lengthy processes. Because, you know, personally, I'm a PPP certified public-private partnership specialist. I appreciate everything to do with public-private partnerships. But somebody who does not appreciate what public-private partnerships are and is coming from the traditional procurement environment, they believe public-private partnerships are very lengthy, outdrawn, and they take a lot of time. And most of the implementers or decision makers have a short-term objectives because they're politicians. So you find a public-private partnership, a typical public-private partnership project can take like, for it to come out, because from the inception to the end can be like 5 to 6 years. So by this time somebody's out of office and the people whom he represents have not seen the outcome of what he intends to achieve from the public-private partnership. So you find there's a problem of understanding exactly expectations from the public-private partnership process, projects and objectives.
It's global. PPPs are complex. You really need to dig in and understand what's going on. You need to pre-agree on a lot of things. And generally something has different meanings to different parties. That has been the gap or cause for problems in PPPs, a common understanding of what needs to be done or what is being agreed to. But I think things are getting better. We've seen a few being executed successfully. We can learn from that. So this is why it's very important that the correct legal framework and institutional framework be in place for us to deliver, for the avoidance of conflicts around PPPs.
Well, there's plenty of projects and there's also plenty of money, but the problem is that the money is looking for the right risk-reward profile. So the challenge for PPPs is to make sure that the risk is mitigated as much as possible. And that can be done in one of two ways. Credit enhancement, where multilateral agencies can provide some support, but also in de-risking through increasing the quality of the institutions and the counterparties that private sector investors are going to engage with through the PPP process.
Well, there are quite a number of challenges, governance issues, regulatory issues, institutional issues. Specifically, if you talk about institutional issues, most of the private sector have complained about too much bureaucracy in the processes involved in actually undertaking PPPs in Ghana. Specifically, we would want to go according to a process and a cycle that we have defined. And relatively, this cycle says that we have to go through a full feasibility analysis of a project, look at the financial model, look at all the issues and identify the various risks, and try to apportion the risks to the various entities, that be the public or the private sector. But the private sector is always in a hurry, and most of them come specifically with unsolicited bids, and they expect that you jump at it and they just go ahead and implement those projects. So that has been a very big challenge for us in terms of the institutional framework.
I think the primary difficulties currently is, one, capacity, and that would be, I think, both in the government and the private sector. You have a lot of times where the understanding of the projects isn't there, which makes it difficult for the projects to be implemented properly. And I think that's one major issue. But then you now have times where, yes, there is good capacity on both sides, but some of those projects also get run into challenges because you might have the end users that could protest and say, we don't want to pay for that service. For example, well, we just have the toll roads in South Africa, for example, and there is protest going on and people not wanting to pay the tolls, which would ultimately affect the success of a PPP project. So let's just take say a PPP project is done and you build a new road and people just refuse to pay the tolls. Then that is a really challenging aspect. And so being able to have a structure that will ensure the revenue, or rather the tariffs, are affordable, and having enough consultation with the end users to ensure that they would pay over the lifetime of the contract is very important.
What do you hope to achieve from participating at the conference?
A lot. First of all, bringing Uganda onto the map as one of the key implementers of the public-private partnerships, and then also to provide a range of public-private partnership projects that we have for many investors to take advantage of, and then also to advertise and promote the investment climate in Uganda, and also to attract many investors into the country to take advantage of not only public-private partnership projects, but other investment opportunities that are available in the country.
And hopefully from that process of engagement, kickstart and get the private investors into projects. I think the whole thing that excites us is that we trigger debate around this, but we are not only debating for the sake of debating. We would like to get on with it and would like to get infrastructure deployed in Africa. The development of infrastructure, as you know, is linked to the development of the region. So this is the way to do it. Let's trigger debate with a sense of urgency, and let's get out there and do these things.
A lot of experiences are being shared. We have some bad experiences, like some good experiences. So we learn a lot from bad experiences, so that we do not repeat the same mistakes that have been done elsewhere. So
well, I think this is a great initiative. It's a really important part of developing better PPPs, to get practitioners together and to share best practices and insights. So well done for reaching your 5th year, and congratulations on a great conference, and I hope there are many more to come.
So I think this is a forum that I have enjoyed very much, because every time I was here, I've learned a lot from all the stakeholders who are here, both the private sector and the public sector. And
create business linkages, but also to see how we could tap into the resources and knowledge of the African, of course, diaspora, but also those who are present in Africa, and showcase them, putting them on the front line for them to have that comfort factor. But again, because we believe in AME trade, we believe in what you've been doing. You've actually shown yourself worthy to us, and we also want to make sure that we just continue to be your lifetime partner in terms of PPP development in Africa. And on the way forward, we've also talked about a lot of activities that I don't want to talk about here, but that will be implemented in next year's event.
Yes. By sponsoring the event, we, of course, enable the event happen successfully. There will be so much deliberation by industry players from government, private sector, investors, lenders, DFIs. And with all that discussion and collaboration on PPPs, there's a lot of knowledge sharing, the opportunities are there. And for us as a firm as well, we're able to showcase our capabilities, we're able to get get contacts, potential clients, and we're able to learn more about the industry as well. So, and it shapes our strategy as to where to go in the future in PPPs. And I think already from what I've seen so far, I've seen quite a number of things happening. Some were involved and some were not, and there've been people we've talked about, and we've talked about potential projects. So I think it's been good fun so far. Ask questions, seek for clarifications, just try and deepen your knowledge, get involved, and and most importantly, have fun. And we'll keep contributing to the success of PPPs in Africa.
And what message do you have for investors looking to invest in Uganda?
The economy is fully liberalized, so there's 100% ownership of your assets when you come into Uganda. The other thing is the government is committed to private sector investment or private sector development, because we have an annual presidential roundtable conference that is chaired by the president himself. So as an investor, you have an opportunity to speak to the president himself on the investment challenges which you could be having, or what you need the president to improve in the country.
The key message is that Tshwane is open for business, from both a trade perspective, the promotion of our exports from Tshwane to the rest of the world, as well as investment into the city of Tshwane.
In what way do you think that PPPs are specifically well suited to Africa?
PPPs provide a framework for which things are done. And Africa needs rigid frameworks to give investors a sense of comfort that these things will be done as described or as agreed to. Africa also needs PPPs because this is the perfect opportunity for private sectors to participate together with public sector in delivering projects.
I think PPPs will help us especially build a good level of transparency, especially in the procurement of various projects. I believe that we are known to be a very corrupt continent. I don't really agree with that because I think systems actually make people corrupt. And the PPP processes actually try to get us to do the right things. And provided we are willing to follow processes that we have put in place ourselves, then it means we'll be doing certain things right. And I think that's one of the things that I would like to see with people.
The African continent is 50 to 100 years behind insofar as basic infrastructure is concerned when you compare it with other continents, be it Asia, the Americas, or even Europe. So I think there is really room for Africa to improve insofar as infrastructure is concerned, using PPP as a vehicle.
How likely do you think it is that cross-border PPP frameworks can be implemented and succeed?
And there's a massive opportunity here for regional collaboration around all of this. And from our point of view, creating the institutions that enable that to happen is very important, and making sure that the appropriate terms of reference and the clear definition of roles and responsibilities is well articulated and agreed is a fundamental part of making that happen. But for Africa, I think it's essential that there are regional collaborations around PPPs, and that will enable them to be accelerated and rolled out more quickly.
If you have a regional framework, then you have the benefit of scale. You do things to a larger scale, you impact a larger populace compared to PPPs being run in individual countries. PPPs by nature also entail a depth of transparency because agreements are agreed to upfront and it's clear how things should work.
Let's make sure that we're building a continent and making sure that as we're building it, we are also covering the risk. There's enough capacity, enough expertise in this continent that we need to use, just like we need to use resources that we have available.